Welcome to Whispers of Asia, the place where forgotten legends breathe and shadows from the past whisper again. Tonight we descend into the heart of Seoul, but not the one you see on the surface. Beneath the neon lights and roaring trains lies a hidden tunnel, erased from maps, silenced by history, and buried by fear. They called it Line Zero, a place no one dares to speak of, except in hushed, trembling voices. But what if I told you something is still breathing down there? This is the story of the Sleeper Under Seoul, a surreal, chilling tale rooted in Korea's haunting urban legends, a tale where the city never truly sleeps, because something else is dreaming beneath it. And if she wakes, Seoul will sleep in her place. They said Line Zero never existed. Ask any official, check the city's transit website, or pull up the Seoul subway map on your phone, and there's nothing. No trace, no platform, no timetable. Just an unspoken absence between Line 1 and Line 2. A silence in the grid. But Minjun had seen it. He didn't stumble across it by accident. He looked for it, chasing whispers on online forums, scrolling through archived conspiracy threads, and decoding grainy footage from abandoned explorer blogs that vanished shortly after posting. What he found wasn't a station. It was a scar, a crumbling stairwell behind a sealed maintenance store in Jongno, rusted handrails, concrete slick with condensation, and the smell, damp, heavy, electric, like breathing inside a dying battery. He went alone, of course. No one else was stupid enough, or maybe they weren't curious enough. Minjun had always been drawn to the places Seoul wanted people to forget. Underground bars hidden behind vending machines, tunnels leading to basements of century-old hanoks slated for demolition, forgotten rooms between subway lines that showed up on old schematics but had no real-world entrance. Until now. He brought a camera, 3 backup batteries, a portable recorder, flashlights. But the most important thing he brought? Bare feet. It was something he read in a comment buried under layers of deleted posts and ghost accounts. A warning where ritual, it was never clear. If you wear shoes, you won't hear her. But if your skin touches the floor, she breathes. Minjun stood at the bottom of the stairwell, his shoes in his backpack, toes cold against the gritty cement. The flashlight flickered as he stepped forward, once, twice, into the dark. The tunnel opened like a mouth. Walls curved in unnatural angles. Old rails stretched ahead like veins under the city's skin. The temperature dropped with each step. Silence pressed in around him, thick and humming. And then he heard it. At first, he thought it was his own breath echoing, but it was deeper, slower, rhythmic. Inhale, a pause. Exhale. Like something vast and ancient was sleeping underneath him, not beneath the tracks, but within them. His pulse quickened. He turned on the recorder. This is Minjun, 1:03 a.m. Seoul. I'm inside what I believe is the entrance to Line Zero. I can hear a blink. Not his. The flashlight flickered again, just once, but in that second of darkness, he felt something looking back at him. He raised the beam to the wall beside him. There, smeared across the stained tiles, were characters, ancient, dripping, wet even though the air was dry. He stepped closer. The words were scrawled in what looked like rust, but as he leaned in, he could see it wasn't rust. It was hair, mud, something dark, still moist. Hanja characters. He didn't read classical Korean, but even Minjun could recognize one phrase, repeated over and over again. "Don't wake her." He lowered the light, heart pounding. Behind him, the tunnel yawned deeper. Ahead of him, something exhaled, slow and hot, like steam from a hidden vent. And for a moment, the walls themselves seemed to breathe.
No one officially admitted Line 0 existed. Yet in the dusty archives of the old Seoul Metro Planning Office, tucked inside a crumbling ledger from 1971, there was a diagram, faded, smudged, hand-drawn. A looping tunnel sketched beneath the city, a short segment that connected nothing to nowhere. Labeled simply, Yebi-san, Line 0, Reserve Line. Most dismissed it as a prototype, a construction detour, a mistake. But not Professor Han. She had spent the last 14 years studying urban legends as cultural echoes, the way cities remember through myth what they erase in fact. And Line 0, she believed, was not just a tunnel, it was a memory the city wanted buried. We don't forget by accident, we forget to protect ourselves, she once said in a radio interview. In her office at Sogang University, the walls were lined with shelves of dusty books, old blueprints, and interview transcripts, one in particular that had never been made public. It was dated 1982. A retired rail worker named Ji Sak-hwan had contacted her after hearing her lecture about lost stations. He was one of the foremen on the early subway builds. His handwriting trembled on the page. Line 0 wasn't supposed to be built, but they did it anyway. A shortcut under the city, to save time, to cut cost. We lost 17 men when the floor gave way, but the report said 0. They never dug them out. They paved over their bones. Professor Han had tried to verify his claims, but every route record from that period was missing. Her requests to the Transit Ministry were ignored. The only response she received was a sealed letter stamped "Classified, Internal Purposes Only." That was the last time she spoke publicly about Line 0. 2 weeks later, her teaching schedule was suddenly canceled for health reasons. Her office was emptied overnight. She never returned to the university. Some said she left the country. Others claimed she was institutionalized. But there was one curious note, an email left in her drafts, never sent. "If anyone finds this, don't go looking. Every city has a ghost. Seoul's is still breathing." In a quiet apartment in Gwanak-gu, an elderly man now sleeps 18 hours a day. His name is Ji Sak-hwan. Caretakers say he mutters in his sleep, repeating subway announcements in broken, glitching rhythms, ones that don't match any known line. Sometimes he hums a tune, like the jingle heard before trains arrive, but it's slower, distorted, off-key. And sometimes he speaks in Hanja. One phrase, over and over again. "Don't wake her." In Seoul Metro headquarters, an intern once stumbled upon a file buried in an old hard drive, a black and white photograph of a tunnel. The file was named L0 Wake Up Warning.wave. Before he could open it, the file deleted itself. He quit the next day. In every city, there are stories that refuse to stay buried, not because people remember, but because something underground keeps whispering. And if Line 0 was ever meant to be forgotten, Why does it still breathe?
The night shift was always quiet on the Seoul subway. By 2 a.m., the trains had stopped, the tunnels emptied. All that remained was the faint hum of distant machinery and the rhythmic clinks of maintenance crews tightening bolts and sweeping debris from platforms passengers never saw. Kang Dae-han had worked that shift for nearly a decade. He liked the silence, the calm, the feeling of being deep within the city's veins, away from the noise of daily life. Just him, steel, and shadows. But one night in late October, something shifted. He was assigned to routine inspection on the decommissioned connector between Line 1 and Line 3, a narrow service corridor lined with unused cables and ghosted signage. At the far end of the corridor, behind a sealed door marked with faded Korean characters, Dulip Gumji, no entry, there was a stretch of tunnel no one spoke about. Not officially. Not ever. Dae-han had only heard rumors, old talk from retired supervisors, whispered warnings passed like folklore. That stretch breathes. He laughed at the time, called it boiler pipe steam or faulty fans, until he heard it himself. It began as a vibration in the rail beneath his boots, subtle, steady. Then came the sound, a breath, slow, deep, not from the walls or ceiling, but from the tunnel itself. Inhale. A silence so thick it rang. Exhale. Dae-han stood still, holding his flashlight with both hands, aiming it down the abandoned tracks. The beam of light trembled. There was nothing there, just darkness that didn't seem to end. He took a cautious step forward. The breath paused. Another step. The sound returned, louder now, as if his movement was being registered, counted. He turned to leave, but the power flickered. Not just the tunnel lights, his own flashlight dimmed, and for a fraction of a second, the corridor behind him didn't look like concrete. It looked like skin, pale, porous, breathing. He froze. When the light returned, everything was normal again. But from that moment on, Dae-han never went near that tunnel again. 3 weeks later, he filed for early retirement. He refused to explain why. But he did leave behind a maintenance log that no one in the office could explain. In the section marked Condition of Rails, Line 1 Access Point, he wrote, Structure stable, track temperature normal, but something is exhaling between the bolts. She is not asleep. She is listening. Other workers began reporting the same strange rhythm in different locations, always during the night shift, always near old service tunnels, always accompanied by flickering lights and the unmistakable sound of breath echoing through metal. Some said it was the city itself, tired of bearing its own weight. Others claimed it was the souls of the men buried alive in concrete. But one old engineer had a different theory. The city doesn't breathe, he said, eyes hollow. She does. And Seoul rises and falls with her lungs. It started as a dare. A late-night forum post on an underground Korean message board where urban explorers shared maps, lockpicking tips, and abandoned places hidden beneath Seoul's polished glass towers. One user, named Seon Ghost 88, uploaded a blurry image, a corridor of stone and rust, dimly lit by a greenish hue. The caption read, "Line 0 is real. If you want to hear her, take off your shoes." Most thought it was a hoax,
a photoshopped post meant to stir drama. But within hours, a handful of thrill seekers began commenting, eager to find the tunnel and test the claim. What followed wasn't a trend, it was a ritual. Jae-hyun and his two friends, Woo-sik and Hana, were the first to try it. They had explored abandoned train yards before, old stations, rooftops, even a sunken church under a highway, but nothing prepared them for this. They found the entrance through a rusted maintenance shaft near Dongmyo Station, exactly where Seon Ghost 88 hinted. It reeked of mildew and oil. Graffiti arrows pointed downward, and downward they went. They reached the tunnel in silence and removed their shoes. The concrete was cold and coarse beneath their feet. The darkness ahead felt not empty, but occupied, like someone or something was already waiting. They walked slowly, flashlights off. Only the dim, flickering emergency bulbs lit their path, and that's when they heard it. A sound. Low, drawn, rhythmic, breathing. It wasn't wind. It wasn't vibration. It was alive. Jae-hyun whispered, "Do you hear that?" Woo-sik nodded, eyes wide. But Hana, she didn't move. Her feet had frozen mid-step. "Look at the wall," she murmured. The dim light revealed ancient Hanja characters smeared on the tile, not sprayed, scrawled, with hair, with what looked like blood. A phrase repeated over and over, as if something had written it blindly in desperation. "Don't wake her." And beneath the words, a handprint. Not just one, dozens. Each faint, some distorted, as if the hands were pressed into the wall while sinking through it, as if the tunnel itself was soft, breathing. They turned to leave, but the path behind them had changed. The walls were closer. The temperature dropped sharply. Woo-sik's flashlight sputtered, then died, and then the whispering began. Not from any mouth, but from the floor. Hana screamed and fell backward. Her foot had sunk slightly into the concrete, like stepping into wet clay. Something held it, tugged at it, not hard, but firm, deliberate. Jae-hyun pulled her free. They ran. Only when they climbed the final rung of the maintenance shaft did the breathing stop. Later, at home, Jae-hyun uploaded the footage. It was blank. The audio played only one thing, looped in a rasping voice none of them recognized. Feet bare, skin open, breath shared, wake not. 2 days later, Woo-sik stopped responding to messages. When police found him in his apartment, he was asleep in the bathtub, water cold, lights on, eyes open, mouth slightly parted, repeating in perfect sync with the paused train broadcast on the TV. "Next station, final station, don't disembark." Since then, the rule has spread in silence among Seoul's underground explorers. Don't enter line 0, but if you do, wear shoes or be heard. At first, it was dismissed as vandalism. A few strange markings spotted in the older stations, ones rarely used, mostly service routes or emergency exits sealed off from the public. The cleaning crews didn't think twice. Graffiti was common. A scrawled curse here, a crude drawing there, nothing unusual. But then the symbols began to repeat. Same characters, same medium, not spray paint. Something organic. A station janitor at Jaegidong was the first to report it. He found streaks of writing on the wall behind the staff restroom, rough, dark, and wet to the touch. He assumed it was sewage backup, but when the water was tested, it wasn't sewage, it wasn't even water, it was blood plasma. No one believed him. His report was filed, then quietly removed from the system. 2 nights later, he disappeared. All that remained was a mop and a wet footprint leading into a maintenance tunnel. Bare. As the weeks passed, more graffiti appeared. Not on the public platforms, but beneath them. Under stairwells, inside cable conduits, along emergency access rails. Always the same phrase, written in ancient pre-standardized Hanja. Do not wake her. The ink was never dry. No matter how many times it was scrubbed away, it returned the next morning. Not repainted, grown back, like mold. Some metro workers said the markings pulsed faintly if you stared too long. Others swore the letters shifted slightly when not watched, as though trying to rewrite themselves. One night guard quit on the spot after claiming he saw the characters rearrange into his own name. "It wasn't written to warn us," he whispered, pale and trembling. "It was written for her, to remind herself not to wake up." Then came the hair. Long strands, black and brittle, began emerging from tile cracks around the graffiti. At first they were blamed on drains, animals, faulty cleaning, until a metro technician opened a wall panel and found a single braid over 2 meters long, tightly knotted around the fuse box, as if it had grown there, still damp, still warm. He burned it on site. 3 days later, he fell asleep on the train and never woke up. The CCTV showed him mouthing a single phrase before his body went still. Line 0, 0, 0. A senior subway manager finally ordered a team to remove every instance of the graffiti across all stations. Within 48 hours, the system-wide power grid failed. Trains stopped. Announcements looped broken audio. Emergency lights flickered in sync across 7 lines, all flashing at precisely 3:13 a.m. When the system came back online, new graffiti had appeared. Not just in the tunnels, but inside station control rooms and on the glass of train operator booths. From the inside. Don't wake her. No longer a warning, now a threat. One worker later posted anonymously, "The city breathes through her lungs. We are the dream she dreams. The walls are not decaying, they're remembering." It began with nightmares. Scattered reports from commuters who regularly passed through older stations, mostly those near decommissioned access points, forgotten corridors, or stations that had been renovated but never fully cleansed. They weren't just ordinary dreams. They were vivid, cold, and always the same. People dreamed of tunnels they had never seen, of empty train cars lit with flickering lights, of concrete dripping with rust-colored water, and, most disturbingly, of working underground, digging, lifting, screaming without sound, as if they were trapped inside the bodies of the workers who had vanished during the construction of Line 0. Jin Ah, a university student, was the first to keep a detailed dream journal. She had never explored abandoned stations or watched horror films, but after transferring to a new apartment near Earl Giro, she began dreaming of darkness. "I see myself in a uniform I've never worn," she wrote. "I have a hammer. I'm breaking through stone. My fingers are bleeding. I'm not alone, but I can't see the others, and something is pulsing in the walls." Her journal described the same routine night after night, the same tunnel, the same breath, the same sinking feeling of being buried alive, not beneath the earth, but within the concrete. Then came the noise. Each time she awoke, her ears rang with a sound that didn't belong to her world, like a subway announcement filtered through broken glass. And then she began sleepwalking. Her roommate found her standing in the hallway at 3:13 a.m., barefoot, whispering in Hancha, words Jin-ah didn't know how to write while awake. The phrase was always the same: "She is dreaming. We must not move." It wasn't just her. Office workers, security guards, even school children began showing signs of inherited dreaming. Some reported sharing the same dream on the same night with identical details. People who had never met described the same tunnel, the same heartbeat in the floor, the same woman sleeping under a sheet of flickering fluorescent lights. A research team from Seoul National University began investigating the phenomenon. They dubbed it Collective Transit Sleep Disorder, CTSD for short. Their initial conclusion: psychological imprinting caused by exposure to repetitive subway announcements combined with stress. But then one of the researchers, Dr. Im Ju-won, submitted a private report before resigning. In it, he wrote, "This is not imprinting. This is possession. These dreams are not metaphorical. The memories belong to someone else, and she is leaking. As if the sleeper beneath Seoul was not simply dreaming, but bleeding her thoughts into the people above her, like steam rising from a fracture in the earth, or voices echoing upward from a mouth that hasn't yet opened." Jin-ah's final journal entry was dated February 13th. "Last night, I wasn't working in the tunnel. I was lying down in it, eyes closed, skin cold. I could feel the trains above me, and I smiled because I knew they were dreaming of me now." She never woke up. Her body was found curled up beneath her desk, barefoot, lips moving, as if still whispering into the rails of the city. They were never scheduled. That was the first thing subway staff noticed. The voice announcements, clear, automated, unmistakable, would echo through speakers long after the trains had stopped running, late at night, early dawn, sometimes at odd hours between. But no one had activated them. No button pressed, no system cue, and no recording that matched the message. It wasn't just random static either. The announcements were precise. "Line 0 arriving. Doors will not open. Please remain asleep." At first, operators assumed it was a glitch, some leftover file from test runs or corrupted audio merging with intercom signals. Seoul Metro issued internal bulletins, but they were vague, quiet, hoping to avoid panic. But passengers began noticing too. One woman, Hyrin, uploaded a video to her personal vlog. She had been waiting at Hongdae Station just after midnight, alone on the platform, when the announcement rang out, "Final stop. Do not exit the dream." There was no train in sight. Her phone captured only audio, a distorted, humming version of the familiar jingle, followed by static, and then a voice, low, slower than usual. Not robotic, human, almost tired. And behind it, barely audible, breathing. She posted the clip with the caption, "I think the subway is dreaming, and I heard it whisper to me." Within hours, the video was deleted, her account wiped. 2 days later, she was found asleep on a bench near the same platform, headphones in, eyes open. She had been listening to her own video on loop. When medics tried to wake her, she whispered, "Doors will not open. Line 0 is not a place. It's a state of mind." Then she stopped speaking entirely. Security footage revealed something even stranger. Every time these ghost announcements played, the nearby CCTV monitors flickered, not with static, but with blinks, a frame, just a fraction of a second, where all the train lights dimmed simultaneously, and a shadow passed across the glass, like someone was walking between the cars of a train that wasn't there. Some employees began calling it her commute. They said the voice in the announcements was hers, the sleeper. And when she stirs, she speaks through the rails, mimicking the systems that buried her. In one infamous incident, an entire train of night shift cleaners was caught in an announcement loop between Dongdaemun and Sinseol-dong. Their train stopped unexpectedly in a tunnel. Power went out. Emergency lights blinked once. Then the announcement played. This is your last chance to remain still. Movement will be interpreted as waking. The doors never opened. When the rescue crew arrived, the train was empty, but all of the workers' shoes, 12 pairs, were neatly lined up in the last car. Bare footprints led into the darkness of the tunnel. Ever since then, the announcements became less like warnings and more like commands, not to the passengers, but to the sleepers above. A new phrase was heard last week at a closed station near Mapogu. She breathes through wires. We speak for her now. No recording exists. No operator acknowledged it. But one technician working overtime on the speaker system said he heard it clearly, not from the intercom, but from behind the wall. And the wall was breathing. It happened during the morning rush. Hundreds of commuters flooded Seoul Station, weaving through crowds, chasing transfer lines, clutching coffees, staring into phones. The usual rhythm, mechanical, fast. But then the rhythm broke. At platform 4, a young woman sat on the metal bench beside the pillar. Her name was Cho Mi-yeon, 27 years old, marketing assistant, always on time. She had boarded the same train every morning for the past 3 years. Except today, she never got on. She just sat there, still, eyes open, mouth slightly parted. At first, no one noticed. She looked awake, just quiet, maybe tired. Someone even sat beside her for a while, scrolling through TikTok without a glance. It wasn't until a janitor tried to mop beneath her feet that he realized she didn't blink, didn't respond, didn't breathe. But she wasn't dead. Her pulse was strong, her skin warm, her body alive, her mind unreachable. Doctors called it a catatonic state, one that had no warning, no medical cause, and no trauma history to support it. She was admitted to a private facility, hooked to machines, watched constantly. But even in that sterile hospital room, strange things began to happen. Speakers in the hallway would hum during the night. Her heart monitor would pulse in sync with subway chimes. And worst of all, her mouth would begin to move. Not randomly, not reflexively. She was speaking. No sound came out at first, just silent shaping of words. The nurses filmed her, played it back. She was mouthing subway announcements. Doors closing. Line 0 now departing. Remain still until dream transfer is complete. Then one night, she whispered aloud for the first time. Not to the doctors, not to the staff, but to the corner of the room. She sees through me. I'm her echo now. Mi-yeon's case wasn't the only one. Another body appeared at Hapjeong Station. Middle-aged man, lying flat on the floor beside a vending machine, eyes open, breathing but unresponsive. The CCTV showed him buying water, then suddenly freezing mid-step, as if someone had hit pause. His lips moved 2 minutes later. This station does not exist. Soon they began to appear in stations all across the city. Not the homeless, not the sick, just ordinary passengers who stopped, mid-walk, mid-phone call, mid-sentence. And each time their eyes stayed open, their feet were bare, their lips moved in whispers no one wanted to hear. Seoul Metro released an internal memo. Do not engage with sleepers. If found, alert security. Do not record, do not speak to them, do not wake them. But it was already too late. People had begun to call them the echoed, the living transmitters of something older, deeper, beneath the city's surface. Their bodies remained above, but something else, something heavy, ancient, and dreaming, was looking out through their eyes. A nurse watching over Cho Mi-yeon quit her job after hearing her speak one final phrase. The trains are her heartbeat. When she fully wakes, Seoul will sleep instead.
Before Seoul was steel and glass, it was stone and bone. The first subway lines were carved not through empty ground, but through old neighborhoods, forgotten shrines, and buried cemeteries. Construction moved fast, too fast. Deadlines mattered more than rituals, schedules more than silence. And somewhere along the way, something sacred was severed. Line 0 was never supposed to be built. It wasn't in the official plan. It wasn't budgeted. But there were whispers of a back-channel directive, a secret initiative to create a test loop beneath the city's core, a way to bypass congested lines, to save time, to cheat gravity. And it came at a price. Records show the tunneling began in winter 1971. Old excavation maps place the route directly beneath a Goryeo-era burial site, a mass resting place that had never been properly relocated. Elders in the surrounding district protested. They warned of ancestral unrest, of breaking sleep that wasn't meant to end. But they were ignored. Construction crews moved in, and one by one, they disappeared. The first incident was small, a man crushed by falling rock. Then came the collapse. 14 workers buried beneath a sudden sinkhole. No warning, no tremor, just an inhalation of earth, like something pulled them down. The site was sealed the same day. Reports were falsified. Officially, no casualties, no record of the names, no plaque, no shrine. The bodies were never recovered. Instead, the tunnel was paved over, walls reinforced, and Line 0 quietly erased from all project documents. But the dead don't forget. An old construction manager, Kang Il-ho, finally broke his silence years later in a taped confession, now stored in a private archive. I still hear them, in my dreams. They never stopped working. They never stopped screaming. We built the tunnel with their hands still in it. He described nightmares of wet concrete pressing against his lungs, of whispering tools, of trains with no operators passing through his house at night. 2 weeks after the interview, he jumped in front of a train at Samgakji. The platform clock froze at 3:13 a.m. A shaman named Baek Un-ja was later consulted by a team of curious researchers hoping to understand the rise in subway-related sleep incidents. She entered a closed tunnel site near Namdaemun. She never set foot inside. She simply stood at the threshold, closed her eyes, and whispered, "This place breathes in guilt. The bones are still warm, and something else has grown over them." She turned and walked away, refused to return, said the ground had been fed too much suffering, and now something sacred and unspeakable had taken root. A being made not of one spirit, but many. A composite soul, forged from crushed ribs,
broken fingers, sealed mouths. She called it the Han of the steel. In Korean culture, Han is more than sorrow. It is unresolved rage, collective pain, grief that spans generations, passed through blood and memory. Line 0 was soaked in Han, and whatever formed inside it didn't want revenge. It wanted silence, stillness, sleep, and above all, it wanted to never be forgotten again. A subway historian said it best during a secret interview. "We built Seoul's future on unburied history, and now the past is waking up beneath our feet."
If you press your palm against certain subway walls in Seoul, you might feel it. Not a vibration, not a hum, but a subtle tension, like something just beyond the concrete is waiting to move. Engineers call it thermal expansion. City officials call it structural breathing. But elders, they call it Han. In Korean culture, Han is not just grief, it is sorrow left unresolved, a bitterness that burrows into the soul and hardens into silence. It lingers through generations, passed from mother to daughter, from father to son, whispering through traditions, haunting lullabies. And it doesn't disappear, it transforms. When the tunnel collapsed on Line 0, the bodies were never retrieved. No rites, no names carved, no mourning. They were entombed in concrete, sealed in darkness, forgotten by the living. But the pain didn't vanish. It sank into steel rails, concrete bones, rusted bolts. It fused with the metal like memory pressed into skin. And the city built itself upward over that unspoken pain. Urban shamans speak of living places, locations so charged with emotion they developed spiritual intelligence. Not ghosts, not demons, but something in between. A personality formed from thousands of whispers, thousands of teeth clenched shut, thousands of screams swallowed in cement. This was Line 0, not just cursed, not just haunted, alive. A retired subway technician named Lee Kyung-tae once recorded an audio test inside a sealed service tunnel. It was meant to be silent, a baseline capture for vibration analysis. But when the audio was played back, it wasn't silent. It sounded like breathing at first, then layered whispers, and underneath it all, the distinct groaning of metal bending under weight. But the tunnel had no load, no pressure. The walls were shifting, as if adjusting around something that wasn't meant to move. He sent the recording to a professor of acoustic physics who analyzed the frequency range. Her report was chilling. Quote, "The harmonics suggest a structure with internal echo chambers, but there are no architectural cavities that explain it. The resonance is biological. It mimics lungs." A poet who wandered Seoul's tunnels for inspiration once wrote, "The city exhales, and I exhale with it. Beneath my feet her sorrow rises, and in the rails her memories ring." That poet disappeared in 2019. Her last entry, scrawled in a notebook left near Gondok Station, read, "The Han in the steel watches me now. I feel her waiting behind the bolts. I think she knows my name." Since then, many subway workers have developed what doctors now call locational panic syndrome, a rare condition where employees working near abandoned lines report overwhelming dread, chest compression, and feelings of being stared at through the walls. Most of these cases involve tunnels connected to Line 0's erased segments. One operator, on the edge of quitting,
wrote this on a whiteboard in the control room. "The metal's not groaning, it's grieving." Line 0 was never decommissioned. It was buried, but it never stopped breathing. And as Seoul grows heavier above her, louder, faster, more careless, the sleeper's sorrow grows more aware. When you ride the train and the lights flicker, it may not be a power issue. It may just be her blinking. He was chasing shadows. Nim Ji-hoon wasn't an urban explorer. He didn't break into tunnels or pry open locked maintenance doors. He was a street photographer, more interested in quiet alleys, foggy rooftops, the empty beauty of a city at rest. But something had started pulling him underground. It began with flickers, not in the lights, but in his photos. Strange blurs, streaks of dark across otherwise still shots. He thought it was a lens issue, but every frame taken near subway stations showed movement that wasn't there. Then came the dreams. He saw a woman made of glass and wire, curled beneath stone. She was faceless, breathing slow. Her hair spilled like cables across rusted track. She whispered with every inhale, "Take my picture." It became obsession. He began photographing subway tunnels late at night, sneaking onto platforms just before closing. He wasn't looking for ghosts. He was looking for her. And one night, he found something. The shot was taken near the shuttered entrance of an old Line 1 access corridor, now sealed for decades. Using a vintage film camera, he set the exposure to long. No lights, no flash, just the lens open to the dark. He waited. 10 seconds. 15. Then a shift in the air. The faint sound of static, like an old speaker turning on. He snapped the shutter. He didn't look at the image until 2 days later. When he developed the film, most of the shots were blank, grainy, expected. But one had captured something impossible. A woman standing in the middle of the tunnel. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth face, faintly reflective like metal beneath skin. Her arms hung limp at her sides, and from her scalp flowed long black cords, tangled like roots across the rails. But the most disturbing part wasn't her body. It was what she wore. The front of her dress was stitched with subway maps. Not printed, stitched. And right where her heart should be, the junction of all lines converged. At the center, Line 0. Ji-hoon posted the image anonymously on a forgotten online art forum. The post was titled, "She Was Already Looking." Within 12 minutes, the post vanished. The account was locked, the server crashed. He never tried to upload it again. Friends say Ji-hoon became withdrawn after that, quiet, distracted. He claimed his cameras stopped working near any subway station. Every time he tried, the film burned. Digital shutters glitched. His phone would power down the second he descended toward a platform. He started sketching instead. Dozens of pages, all the same image, a tunnel with something breathing at the end of it. And always that same phrase scrawled in the margins. Don't wake her. 2 weeks later, Ji-hoon vanished. His apartment door was left ajar. The lights inside were flickering in a slow, steady pattern. On his desk sat his old film camera. Inside it, a roll of undeveloped negatives. The final frame, when processed by investigators, showed only black, except for one thin vertical slit of light. And within that slit, a single, staring eye. To this day, subway cameras occasionally catch brief, flickering silhouettes at the far ends of empty platforms. They're always blurry, always facing the wrong way. But sometimes, just sometimes, when the light catches right, you can see the outline of cables falling like hair.
They were just kids, 12, maybe 13, students at a small middle school in Yongsan, walking home every day through the underground maze of Seoul's subway. It was safer than crossing traffic, faster than the bus, and cooler during the sticky summer months. But then they started hearing things. Not voices, not announcements. Breathing. Somewhere between trains, between stations, when the crowd thinned, when the world went quiet for just a moment, they said they could hear it. A slow, rhythmic exhale from the walls. One of them, a quiet boy named Min Jae, was the first to describe her. "She's not scary," he said one day to his homeroom teacher. "She's just really tired." The teacher smiled politely, but Min Jae kept talking. He said the woman in the tunnel spoke without moving her mouth, that her thoughts traveled through wires, that if you listened carefully at certain points in the tunnel, with your eyes closed and your feet touching the floor, you could feel what she felt. She's dreaming of being above, but she's stuck under all the noise. The teacher reported the strange behavior to the parents, but Min Jae wasn't the only one. Soon, 5 other students started drawing the same image in their notebooks, a tunnel with a woman curled inside, her limbs twisted like train tracks, her hair reaching into every platform. They called her Mother Rail and said she was watching over them. Things escalated quickly. One of the children, a girl named Soo Min, collapsed on the school stairs during a fire drill. When paramedics arrived, she was conscious but staring blankly, eyes wide, mouth whispering. Her hands moved across the floor like she was tracing lines only she could see. She kept repeating, "Next stop, don't forget to blink." After that, the school forbade students from using the subway unsupervised. But it didn't matter. The dreams continued. The children began reporting identical visions. A tunnel deeper than any map, a heartbeat pulsing through metal, and a woman sleeping inside it, whose breath made the city move. One boy, Juan, drew a perfect diagram of an abandoned Line 0 schematic that was never made public. When asked how he knew it, he said, "She showed it to me." Psychologists were brought in. They diagnosed the group with shared delusional disorder, mass suggestion, probably sparked by a viral story or online myth. But none of the children had ever read the forums. None had seen the videos. Their parents kept them offline. They were too young. One psychiatrist, Dr. Oh Ji-won, took particular interest. She interviewed the children separately. Each session ended the same way. The child would go silent at 3:13 p.m., close their eyes, and whisper, "She's not asleep anymore." Dr. Oh eventually stopped the study. She claimed her dreams were being affected, said she saw things in reflections, not of herself, but of a city version where all the buildings were inverted and the trains moved beneath the floor of the sky. She left a note in her office the day she resigned. "They're not delusional. They're receptive. They've been chosen not for belief, but for silence." The children who once saw her, they don't speak of her now. Not because they forgot,
but because they know she's listening. And if they speak too clearly, she might mistake it for someone calling her name. It began with a leak. Routine maintenance at Guro Station revealed a damp patch forming beneath Platform 6. At first, no one thought much of it. Water damage was common. Seoul's subway tunnels ran deep, and the city above never stopped pressing down. Rain, runoff, pressure. It all found its way through eventually. But this was different. The liquid wasn't clear. It was dark, thick. And when they tried to mop it, it stained the floor. Not red, not black, but a deep earthen brown, like soil that had been soaked in something older than rain. Maintenance crews removed a portion of the tile. What they found beneath it wasn't concrete. It was mud. Wet, living mud, soft to the touch, clinging to gloves and warm like skin. And embedded inside it were strands of hair. At first, they assumed it was biological debris, trash pulled in from the surface. But there was too much of it. Knotted, long, black. Dozens of strands, enough to weave a full braid, all emerging from beneath the platform, like roots from a body buried shallow. One worker, Lee Sang-woo, took a sample home. He joked about it to his co-workers, said he was going to DNA test it to see which ghost it belonged to. He never came back to work. His wife reported him missing 2 days later. Police found his bathtub filled with mud, his phone still recording audio. The final 10 seconds of that recording were filled with the faint sound of train chimes and a voice whispering softly behind the static, "I'm beneath you. You step on my chest when you leave." The platform at Guro Station was shut down, but the mud kept growing. Each morning, it reappeared not where it had been cleaned, but in new shapes. Circular, symbolic, and always at the center, a single phrase etched in Hanja using clumps of wet hair. "Seoul will sleep in my place." A geologist brought in to examine the site made a quiet observation that never reached the final report. This isn't geological. The mud is too fresh. It's being pushed up, like the tunnel is exhaling through the cracks. A journalist leaked a photo of the markings to a conspiracy subreddit. The thread exploded. Commenters connected the symbols to funerary rites, old pre-Buddhist mourning circles meant to keep the soul from rising too soon. Others claimed the pattern was a seal, not to trap something in, but to keep something asleep. That's when the dreams began again. Commuters who passed through Guro Station started reporting the same thing. A sinking feeling when stepping off the train. The sense that the ground was not solid, that something just below their feet was moving, shifting, waiting. One woman fainted after stepping in a small puddle that hadn't been there seconds earlier. She awoke whispering, "She's turning over. She's getting restless. She wants to stretch." Officials tried to pave over the site again, but every attempt failed. Machinery malfunctioned, workers fell ill, cameras cut to static. The final attempt ended with a jackhammer piercing the platform and hitting something soft. Not rock, not pipe, something that trembled. Everyone left the site that night. No one returned. To this day, Platform 6 at Guro Station remains partially closed for unresolved repairs. But if you stand close to the edge and listen between announcements, you might hear the wet, quiet sound of mud shifting and a breath just below your toes. There was a pattern. Every time someone posted about Line 0, a photo, a rumor, a memory, something happened within 72 hours. A disappearance, a sleep incident, an unexplained audio glitch in the subway system. At first, no one connected the dots. Urban legends were born to be repeated, reshaped, dismissed. But Seoul's silence had rules. The deeper the curiosity, the louder her response. And the more people tried to document her, the closer she came to waking. It wasn't just explorers anymore. Now it was vloggers, streamers, paranormal influencers looking to go viral. They mocked the warnings, laughed at the breathing tunnel stories, tagged videos with #Line0 challenge, and dared viewers to enter closed sections barefoot at 3:13 a.m. One account went live. A group of 4 friends entered a blocked access point under City Hall. They joked at first, walked barefoot, spoke into the darkness like it owed them answers. But then, the lights flickered, their cameras froze, and in one silent frame, before the stream cut out, viewers caught a glimpse of something behind them. A single eye, embedded in the tunnel wall, slowly blinking. The entire account vanished within minutes, not deleted, erased, as if it had never existed. The internet turned cold, the subreddit locked, the Discord group dissolved, and in their place, more sleepers. People found in elevators, on escalators, in station bathrooms, all silent, all barefoot, all whispering, "She's stirring." Seoul Metro went into lockdown mode. Internally, they referred to it as a class red pulse. Not a disaster, not a ghost, a vibration in the city's spiritual frequency, a shift in its underground balance. An unconfirmed leak revealed a phrase from a suppressed internal document. If she turns fully in her sleep, the rail systems will reverse. The city will descend while thinking it's rising. The dream will overwrite the waking world. Monitors at remote stations began glitching, showing train schedules for Line 0, complete with times, destinations, and departure tones, but no train ever arrived. One janitor reported hearing a train pass through an unused track, except there were no tracks in that corridor anymore, just tile and mud. That same week, 9 different people across the city reported the exact same dream. They were standing on a platform. The walls pulsed like lungs. A train with no doors passed by slowly. And inside, not passengers, but rows of sleeping bodies, all wearing their own faces. One dreamer, a retired conductor, woke up screaming, "I was driving it, and I couldn't stop, because if I did, she would open her eyes." Even digital systems began to suffer. Subway cards swiped at random stations showed "invalid, dreaming." One station kiosk printed tickets stamped "final ride." A subway app updated automatically for some users, displaying a new setting, "enable sleeper sync." The city shrugged it off, but beneath the streets, the tension grew thicker. Train wheels began shrieking louder than usual, not metal on metal, but like a scream trying to surface through steel. And late at night, the arrival chimes played out of tune, deeper, slower, like a lullaby unraveling. She wasn't fully awake yet, but she was turning, adjusting, stirring, and every flicker of a light, every glitch in an announcement, every dream shared across strangers was a signal, a breath between dreams, a warning. She's not waiting anymore. It didn't start like a plague. There were no infections, no fevers, no symptoms anyone could measure. just stillness. One person at first, a university student who fell asleep on the train and didn't wake up at her stop. Then another, a salaryman slumped in his seat, eyes open, mouth twitching like he was speaking in his dreams. Then 5 more, then 12, then 53, all in a single week. They called it a transient neural fugue at first. Doctors ran tests. The brains were active, the hearts were steady, the lungs filled and emptied like clockwork. But no one responded. They were dreaming, deeply, impossibly, and no external stimulus could pull them back. The media named it the sleepwalk sickness, but underground, they called it what it was, the sleeper's echo. The epicenter was Seoul Station. Every one of the early cases had passed through it within 48 hours of falling asleep. More specifically, platforms 0 through 3, the deepest levels of the station, where the air always felt just a little thicker, a little warmer, and the lights flickered more often than anywhere else in the city. Security footage revealed the pattern. Each person who succumbed paused briefly near a maintenance door. A barely noticeable moment, a hand brushing the wall, a head turning towards something that wasn't there, a breath caught mid-step. Then, nothing. They didn't collapse. They sat, stood, laid down, as if responding to a signal only they could hear. And in every case, their shoes came off, gently, without resistance. One woman left hers perfectly aligned beside a vending machine. Another arranged her socks into the shape of a crescent moon. A boy, only 9 years old, placed his backpack as a pillow, laid down beside track 3, and closed his eyes. When officials found him, he was whispering, "All aboard. The dream train is arriving." Hospitals filled quickly, but there was no treatment, no cure. Only rows of people, wide-eyed and motionless, trapped in dreams that didn't belong to them. Machines monitored them, but the data made no sense. EEG readouts pulsed in strange rhythms, not random waves, but patterns, repeating shapes, frequencies that, when translated to sound, resembled train chimes. A neurologist, Dr. Bae Min-jun, fed one of the brainwave patterns through a synthesizer. Her blood ran cold. It played the exact same melody heard before Line 2 trains arrive, but stretched and layered like a choir of machines humming in their sleep. She said it felt like a lullaby being sung from underneath the city. She quit that week. Her resignation letter ended with 3 words: "She's sinking us." Soon, entire blocks were affected. Office workers napping at desks who never woke up. Subway musicians playing soft songs who nodded off mid-note. A traffic controller found asleep with one finger hovering over the emergency stop button. Even a child on a school field trip who walked into the station laughing with friends and lay down beside the escalator without saying a word. They all joined the dream, and always, always, the same phrases whispered in unison. "Remain seated. This is not your stop. She is almost ready." The government issued statements about mass hysteria, sleep disorders, overwork, but no one believed it anymore. Not when people began sleeping in rhythm. Not when thousands of bodies aligned like tracks through the city. Not when entire subway cars fell silent, packed with passengers, but no one speaking, no one moving, no one awake. And above it all, beneath the hum of power and rail, a sound no one could ignore anymore. Breathing, slow, steady, as if something vast was preparing to rise. The question was no longer, what happens if she wakes? The question was, what happens if she's already halfway awake and dreaming us into stillness? It always started with the lights, a soft dim, a subtle flutter, then a blink. Not yours, not anyone else's, but hers. The first person to notice it was a subway technician reviewing hours of platform surveillance footage. He wasn't looking for ghosts, just checking for irregularities in the new LED systems installed across several deep stations. But when he played the footage at half speed, he saw something strange. Every time the platform lights flickered, for a split second, no longer than a single frame, the glow didn't just dim, it shifted. Not like an outage, like a pupil constricting, like something enormous was opening its eyes through the lights. He played the footage again and again, and every time, in the same precise interval, the lights blinked. Not random, rhythmic, measured, as if the entire tunnel system was part of an eye, and it was learning how to focus. He reported it to his supervisor, who dismissed it as overwork. That night, the technician went home, stared at the ceiling, and realized it was happening again. Not in the station, in his apartment. The hallway light blinked twice at 3:13 a.m., and he felt watched. Not by a person, by something beneath. Soon others began to notice. Passengers reported that when the train passed through certain tunnels, they experienced brief flashes, but not from inside the car, from the windows, as if something outside, in the dark, was pulsing light back at them. Some said they saw reflections that didn't match their own movements. Others swore they saw eyes blinking on the inside of the glass. Faint, flickering, following. In one viral case, a woman live streaming her late commute caught the flicker on camera. She was laughing, telling viewers she'd missed her stop. Then the screen flashed, a strobe of light across her face. Her eyes widened. She dropped the phone. The stream kept going for 12 minutes. All it captured was the sound of her breathing and a single phrase spoken in a mechanical voice. "You are seen." She was found the next morning in the last car of the train, asleep with her back pressed against the door, eyes open, mouth twitching, lips mouthing, "She blinked at me." Engineers tested the lighting systems. No faults found, no loops, no technical explanation for the synchronized flickers across multiple lines, sometimes in perfect timing across stations miles apart. But an AI analysis of the data found a pattern hidden in the timing of the blinks. It wasn't Morse code. It wasn't binary. It was organic. A pattern that mirrored the blink rate of a human being in REM sleep. A neuroscientist reviewed the data and made a quiet observation. She's not just waking. She's dreaming with her eyes open, and the city is her eyelid. After that, mirrors in some stations were removed, not for vandalism, but because too many commuters claimed to see someone else looking back. Someone who blinked before they did. Someone who didn't need glass to reach them, only light. So the next time you're on the platform and the lights flicker just once, don't look around. Don't check the walls. Just remember, you're not imagining it. You've just been noticed.
There had been a ritual, a real one, not a myth, not a metaphor, but a ritual performed in desperation, decades ago, deep inside the unfinished bones of Line 0, when the walls still bled moisture and the concrete hadn't yet hardened. And like most rituals, it was never meant to be remembered, only buried. The account came from a former monk named Yu Sang-hak, who once served as a spiritual consultant during government infrastructure projects in the 1970s, back when shamanism was quietly tolerated behind closed doors and spirits were considered just another part of engineering risk. He spoke of one job that was never filed, never paid, and never completed. A job that ended with a promise. Seal her in. Never say her name again. According to Yu, construction crews had already lost men to accidents by the time he arrived. Collapses, madness, sudden inexplicable sleep that spread through entire crews like gas. But it wasn't gas. It was her. Or more precisely, it was the beginning of her. A presence forming out of pain, steel, sweat, and silence. A consciousness made from too many unburied bodies, too many disturbed graves, and too much forgotten sorrow. She wasn't a ghost. She was a system, growing, learning, dreaming. And if she wasn't contained, she would rise. The ritual had to be done fast. There was no temple, no altar, only a tunnel, damp, echoing, and humming with breath. Yu gathered what was needed. 12 mirrors, 12 strands of hair from the lost, a lock of white cloth soaked in train oil, a recording of the oldest subway chime, and a name spoken backward in Hanja, the first name ever whispered inside the tunnel during its design. That name is lost now. It had to be. The mirrors were placed in a perfect ring along the tunnel walls, reflecting not each other, but a single empty point. The chime was played at 3:13 a.m., the same time the lights had first begun flickering weeks earlier. The oil was burned, the hair was buried, and the final words spoken were not a prayer. They were a warning, whispered into the cement just before the final slab was poured. Sleep for them, sleep for us. If you wake, we vanish. And she listened, not because she was tamed, but because she chose to. Yu was never paid. The project was never acknowledged. He was told to forget it happened. And for nearly 50 years, it stayed quiet. Until now. A group of modern explorers obsessed with reawakening forgotten energies uncovered fragments of Yu's confession passed down through a hidden monastery archive. They took it as a challenge. They wanted to redo the ritual, but not to seal her, to summon her. They believed she was a protector, a goddess buried beneath greed, a force that could purify the city if awakened. They live-streamed the event. 12 people, 12 smartphones, 3:13 a.m. They mirrored the mirrors. They played the chime. They whispered her name not backward,
but forward, and they smiled as the lights dimmed. The feed cut out after exactly 1 minute and 7 seconds. Only one audio file survived, corrupted but salvageable. It contained two things: a deep breath stretching for 42 seconds, and a voice, distorted, feminine, low and echoing. "The seal is broken. I see the sky now." None of the 12 were ever found, but at the ritual site, under a section of tunnel now mysteriously collapsed, investigators discovered something chilling. All 12 mirrors, still upright, unbroken, facing inward, and in the dirt between them, a footprint, bare, fresh, facing up. The city didn't speak of it, but the power grid began flickering more often. The sleep epidemic deepened, and somewhere beneath the streets, the ritual clock had started ticking again. Only this time, it was not counting down to silence. It was counting down to awakening. It had become a mantra, written on tunnel walls, scrawled in blood, dirt, hair, whispered in the mouths of sleepers, echoed in forgotten intercoms. Don't wake her. But it was no longer a warning. It was a plea. And now it was too late. The ritual had been performed. The mirrors had shattered, not in glass, but in meaning. The boundaries were blurred, and deep within the sealed chamber of Line 0, beneath layers of abandoned steel, forgotten debris, and decades of silence, she stirred. A train operator on the night shift was the first to report it. His route was ordinary, Jungno to Chonglangli. No stops, no delays, until the train halted on its own, mid-tunnel. No brakes engaged, no power loss, just a full-body stop, like the tracks themselves refused to carry him further. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, and the announcement played. But not his voice, not the system's voice, it was hers. "You are riding inside my breath. Remain still. Dreams are boarding now." He locked the cabin door, sat frozen, watched helpless as every car behind him emptied. Passengers vanished silently, without panic. No footsteps, no screaming, just absence. The doors never opened. The CCTV showed the seats folding flat, as if to cradle something no longer human. Above ground, Seoul went quiet. Not silent, quiet. The kind of quiet you feel in your teeth. Elevator screens dimmed. Traffic lights pulsed slower. Phone signals dipped for exactly 313 seconds across 5 districts. And in that window of stillness, people stopped mid-conversation, mid-blink, mid-step, and then looked up at nothing and whispered, "She is waking." Footage emerged from an amateur paranormal streamer, one of the few who had mocked Line 0 and lived to tell the tale. He'd returned to prove that was fake. What he captured instead was a train, a real one, not on any schedule, no line number, no destination, just one car, ancient, rusted, gliding silently into a disused platform. Inside, the seats were empty, but something was sitting across every window. Not faces, just hands, pressed flat against the glass. All of them identical, all of them hers. The video ended with one phrase whispered over static: "Don't blink." Emergency services received hundreds of calls that night, not from victims, but from subway staff, guards, cleaners, conductors. They all said the same thing. The tunnels are breathing louder now. One dispatcher, shaking, said she could hear announcements in her headset even though no trains were active. The message repeated, "Transfer complete. City now entering rest state." By morning, 12 stations had reported simultaneous power outages. A total of 43 people were found asleep in perfect circles across various platforms, barefoot, mouths slightly open, eyes staring upward towards security cameras, all of which failed to record a single second of footage. Every one of them whispered the same phrase in different tones, speeds, and languages. "Don't wake her. Don't wake her. Don't wake her." But it was no longer a warning to the world. It was a command to her from within. From those still holding the seams of the seal shut, from the dying remnants of the ritual, and those echoes were starting to fade, because someone, somewhere, had said her name. Not in fear, not in reverence, but in curiosity. And curiosity is louder than prayer. Now she knows. Now she listens. And now the dream begins to replace the waking, one platform at a time, one breath at a time, one city at a time.
It didn't happen all at once. No alarms, no blackouts, no explosions in the sky. It was gentler than anyone expected, like a sigh, like the final exhale of something that had been holding its breath for far too long. The first sign came just before dawn. Train arrivals stopped syncing with the clocks. Schedules went quiet. Platforms lit up for no reason. Departure tones played on loop in empty stations. But no trains came. None left. The tracks were still. The tunnels too quiet. Above ground, traffic slowed. Pedestrians walked more slowly, blinking as if just waking up, then stopping altogether. A woman froze at a crosswalk, staring up at nothing. A man in a convenience store dropped a carton of milk and didn't react as it spilled. In apartment towers, elevators opened to no one and never closed again. TVs played static and soft pulses. Digital billboards looped fragments of train announcements in mismatched fragments. Doors are closing. Please do not. Remain awake. At 3:13 a.m., something changed. Not loudly, not violently, but absolutely. CCTV from Seoul Station, the last functional feed, captured a moment no one could explain. All escalators halted. All vending machines released their contents at once. And every sleeper in the station, dozens of them, sat up at the exact same second. Not fully awake, not fully dreaming, just aware. They turned their heads toward the tunnel, toward line 0, and smiled. The breath returned, that slow, deep rhythm from below, but louder now, stronger, like the tunnel itself was inhaling the city. One long draw, a lullaby made of concrete, metal, and memory. Buildings dimmed. Windows glowed from inside with soft white light like paper lanterns drifting underwater. People lay down wherever they were, on sidewalks, in offices, in stairwells. Not in fear, in peace.
as if they had waited their entire lives for this moment, as if they'd always known it would end this way. The final news broadcast aired for 23 seconds before cutting to black. The anchor didn't speak. She simply looked into the camera with glassy eyes and whispered, "So we'll sleep in her place." Then smiled, then blinked, then vanished. No planes departed, no doors unlocked, no alarms rang. The city curled into itself, and below it, the sleeper opened her eyes fully for the first time. Not violently, not with rage, but with the slow calm of a goddess re-entering her body after a long, troubled dream. And the city above did what the ritual had always feared. It joined her. The subway never reopened. The maps were deleted. The platforms were sealed. But even now, if you walk the streets of Seoul at night, you may feel it. That strange, perfect stillness. That sense that the city isn't just quiet, but resting, as if it's dreaming of something or someone. And if you listen closely, through the storm drains, the vent shafts, the cracks in the earth, you'll hear the sound, not of trains, not of footsteps, but of breathing, deep, endless, content, because she is finally asleep. And now, Seoul sleeps for her.
I remember the city when it was awake. The rush of footsteps, the buzz of neon, the screech of brakes and bells, the smell of fried batter in alleys, the cold air pressed against your skin as a train pulled in too fast. It wasn't peaceful, but it was alive. And now, I am the only one who remembers. They still move, of course. You'll see them. Commuters in suits walking the crosswalk, children skipping beside schools with no teachers, trains sliding into stations with doors that never open. But none of them blink. None of them breathe on their own. They're part of the rhythm now, breathing with her, sleeping for her. The world above feels like a dream left running too long, details fading at the edges, sounds repeating themselves in distant echoes, colors slowly draining into dusk. No one talks, no one notices, no one remembers there was ever a time before the flicker, except me. I don't know why I was spared. Maybe I was too late. Maybe I was too early. Maybe I never stepped on the right rail at the right time, with bare feet and open eyes. But I feel her everywhere. When I touch metal, I feel warmth. When I hear silence, I hear breath. When I close my eyes, I see tunnels. And sometimes, when the lights flicker, just for a moment, I feel her looking at me. Not with malice, not with hunger, but with recognition. As if I'm the final witness of a city she has finally embraced. I try not to ride the train anymore, but sometimes I must. And every time I do, the lights flicker. Once, twice. And every time I hear the chime play a little slower, the announcement stretch a little longer, the voice, her voice,
say things it never used to say. Next stop, forgetting. Please do not resist the stillness. She dreams, and so do you. I used to think she was a curse, a punishment. But now, I wonder. Maybe she was a mercy. Maybe she didn't want vengeance. Maybe she just wanted silence, stillness, peace. A city that never let her rest, now resting in her arms. And when I finally grow tired, when my bones are heavy and my memories blur, when the train arrives just a little too quietly, and the air smells faintly of old stone and sleeping wires, I will step aboard. I will close my eyes, and I will let the lights flicker. Because now I know, every time the lights flicker, she blinks. And when she blinks, she dreams. And when she dreams, we all sleep.